Well, let's get Brian Hadad's thoughts on this. He's on Mississippi airwaves on Sports Talk Mississippi, on SuperTalk Mississippi, Monday through Fridays from 3 to 6 in the afternoon. Brian, what do you make of what's occurred in Baton Rouge this week with the ousting of Brian Kelly and also the AD Scott Woodward being fired as well?
You know, it's the same thing that with the NIL stuff that goes on in Washington. I mean, why are we allowing politicians to do anything? They shouldn't be. They can barely get the mail out on time, and we're going to let them hire a college football coach. If you're somebody who doesn't support LSU, you should be all about this process. Let the governor hire the coach. Let him just keep talking, because every time he opens his mouth, it makes it more and more difficult for them, I think, to get an attractive coach. I would have told you a week ago when this job opened up, I guess I shouldn't say a week ago, on Monday, that I thought Lane Kiffin going to LSU was a real possibility. But after what's occurred, I can't imagine Jimmy Sexton's going to advise him to do that, and I can't imagine Kiffin wants to step into that kind of a mess. So I don't know who they're going to end up hiring, but they've got a lot of damage control to do. But it just goes back to that. Doesn't matter what party we're talking about. Idiots on both sides that have no business in college football. We got bigger problems than college football for governors and senators and presidents to be figuring out.
Yeah, I mean, because now you've got, no captain at the helm for your athletic department. How much authority does your chancellor or president really have if the governor's involved? And you're right, it's turned into a complete bleep show that I think is, who's going to want this mess down there? And again, as I was saying as you're coming on, you fired a coach that, had 3 losses, but they're all the top 10 teams. I mean, there's other options out there.
Yeah, it was funny to read. The athletic director piece of it is the more interesting one to me, because I saw a graphic today that Woodward was the athletic director for 7 national championships in his 6 years at LSU. I mean, that reads like a successful resume, and yet he's been pushed out. Why? Nobody really knows. They'll say it's a mutual decision, but it obviously isn't. And then with Kelly, I mean, yeah, this is a team that came into the season with big expectations. And they haven't, in his 4 years there, they haven't been to the college football playoff. They haven't won an SEC championship. I understand they have a higher standard, but, I get what you're saying about 3 losses. But at the same time, one of those losses is to Vanderbilt. And I know Vanderbilt isn't Vanderbilt this year, but LSU should be able to beat Vanderbilt 99.9% of the time. And it's not that they lost to them, but they didn't look that competitive with them. So I don't know what's going to happen down there the rest of the season at LSU. There's like 3 or 4 teams like that in the SEC this year where you're looking at them and go, man, they could just completely bottom out. And 2 of them are playing in Arkansas where we don't know what's going to happen with some of these teams.
Yeah. This Woodward deal with Landry, the governor and the AD, this has to be a deal like someone's disrespected someone at a cocktail party. They got into it over funding, at the Capitol. This has got to be something that's become really personal between these 2 men that have found some kind of disdain for each other. Because you never see a governor get this neck deep into a state university's athletic department. You don't ever see it.
Yeah, and, it's different here in Mississippi because you have 2 big SEC schools, and Southern Mississippi has a sizable fan base. So if a governor got involved for one school, he'd lose the votes for the other 2. Louisiana, Arkansas is a little different, right? Because you just have the one big in-state school, and then you have the smaller schools. So I guess you can feel like a little more comfortable putting your foot in the water, but, man, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Talking with Brian Hadad. He does Sports Talk Mississippi on Super Talk 3 to 6 Monday through Friday here on the Lewis Automotive Group hotline. Brian, let's come back to the game this weekend. You mentioned 2 teams bottom of the barrel, Arkansas, Mississippi State, both desperate for their first SEC win. Jeff Lebby's, at least from the outside looking in, doesn't seem to be in trouble. Bobby Petrino's vying for this head coaching job. What are your feelings on heading into this game tomorrow about both teams and how important it is for both squads?
It's 2 different things, right? With Arkansas and Petrino, he's got to get at least 1 win if he wants to have a realistic chance of getting this job on a permanent basis, I would think. You guys would know more about that than I would. But I can't imagine that if he loses out that there would be a lot of excitement about bringing that back as a full-time gig. So he needs to have a win. I thought they had a great chance last weekend, and they were up in that game, and it just fell apart on them there. And so that would concern me if I'm an Arkansas fan of how much does this team really have to give? I've talked to a couple of Arkansas people this week, and they both told me that, not expecting the biggest crowd in Fayetteville this weekend. So how much, motivation does the team really have? For State, they've been so close these past few weeks. They had Tennessee on the ropes and couldn't knock them out. They had a great chance at Florida, and they just gave it away. And then this past weekend was probably the worst one of all with Texas, where you're up 17 in the fourth quarter with a chance to have a really program-changing win, and you don't get it. I feel like they're really close. But they don't know how to win. They just don't know as a program. Levy is a first-time head coach, doesn't know how to get his guys over the hump. He's got players out there that they just can't make that last play, or they make a dumb play like they did last week with Deontay Anderson roughing the passer in a 4th and long, where you're going to get off the field up 17 and have the ball in Texas territory, chance to put the game away, but instead you commit a penalty and the game goes and the drive goes on and Texas comes back to win. So something's got to give tomorrow in Fayetteville. Somebody's going to get their first win. As we sit here right this second, man, if you made me make a prediction, it really feels like a coin toss to me.
Yeah. Brian, the situation, as you kind of laid it out, the script reads a lot like where Arkansas was 13 or 14 years ago. Now, the death of Coach Leach was much more tragic than what happened with Bobby Petrino, but both had traumatic, untimely endings to their head coach, an interim year with someone they brought on staff that didn't go well, bring in a head coach, and you ride this long SEC losing streak. It's very similar from when Arkansas went from Petrino to John L. Smith into the Bielema era, where it's kind of taken Levy a little while, kind of like it took Bielema. So, I mean, a lot of what State's going through now feels like what Arkansas went through in 12, 13, 14, and kind of got it turned around in 14 and 15.
Yeah. And both had, very different scenarios, obviously, but both had a coach leave unexpectedly,
right,
with Petrino and everything that happened there. And obviously the tragic, passing of Mike Leach puts you into this situation. Then Mississippi State promotes a guy that, quite frankly, wasn't ready for that job, and it let him swallow him up. Zach Arnett, the guy I knew as the defensive coordinator at Mississippi State, and the guy that I talked to when he was the head coach at Mississippi State, two completely different people. And that didn't work out. I give Zach Selman, the athletic director, a lot of credit for realizing that very early. And, because a lot of coaches, you're not going to let them go in their first year. You would give them that second year to at least see what's going on. Selman didn't wait around. He knew where the program was headed. Last year was just a combination of years of poor defensive recruiting. With Mike Leach, God bless him, but didn't pay a lot of attention to what's going on the defensive side of the ball. Let a lot of his auxiliary staff handle some recruiting stuff for them. And so State's roster was not where it needed to be. You see the improvement from year one to year two under Levy. This team is 100% better than they were a year ago. But on the scoreboard where it counts in the SEC, they haven't gotten it done. The win over Arizona State, that's a great win at the time, but we saw today that Sam Leavitt out for the season, so Arizona State's record's not going to look as good as probably what that team could be. State just needs to get one win. I feel like if State could beat Arkansas Saturday, it would get the ball rolling. I think they would have a great chance at Missouri now that Fribula is going to be out. And the Egg Bowl, the pilot just throws on the what the heck sign usually about midway through the first quarter, and anything can happen in that game. So, but State's just got to get some momentum. If they could just get one win, I think the ball will get rolling downhill for them.
I want to ask you about a former Mississippi State coach. You rattle off a few of them there. Dan Mullen's name has been tossed around, not just here in Fayetteville, but maybe some other destinations. He's having success in Vegas. What are your thoughts on a guy that's had a little bit of success in the SEC, in Starkville and in Gainesville, and maybe coming back to this conference?
Well, I know that I don't think Mississippi State's going to get involved in the coaching carousel, but if they were to decide to move on from Jeff Levy, that would be my first call, was to bring him back to Starkville. He's a winner. I think if he was interested in Arkansas, which he said he was not, but he also said things like that in the past about other jobs here at Mississippi State, and then went on to Florida. He knows how to do a little bit more with a little bit less. He's always been a great evaluator. He doesn't have to have those 4- and 5-star guys. But nowadays, with recruiting being what it is, where it's more of a money game and you can just be honest about it, I think he could be very successful. I'm not surprised that he's winning at UNLV. And the kind of players that Arkansas and places like Mississippi State can win with Dan Mullen. I mean, I have no doubt about that. So if he wants to get back in the SEC, My guess is he could do it this season if he wanted to. When you think about the jobs that are probably going to open up, Arkansas is already open. Will Kentucky come open? Will South Carolina come open? Those are all places I think Dan Mullen could be very successful.
Brian, last question before we let you go. I want to ask you a basketball one. Josh Hubbard on first-team All-SEC list. I know that the SEC gets 14 teams in. Razorbacks are going to be an NCAA tournament squad like Chris Jansen and the Bulldogs. Just what are your thoughts on how much the SEC has progressed in basketball? First championship since 2012 with Kentucky. Florida takes it last year, and what that outlook looks like starting Monday night.
Yeah, I can't imagine the conference is going to be as good as it was a season ago when it was just historically good. Everybody will probably take a small step back. Some teams will take some small steps forward. But that being said, 14 teams a season ago, it might be like 11 or 12 this year, something like that. But it's still going to be an incredible gauntlet for everybody to get through. And for State, it's a very simple formula. State has not advanced in the NCAA tournament past the first round since 2008. Now, it's not that they've made it every year, but when they have made it, they have always gone out in their first game. That's the goal for Chris Jansen. It's just to have an extended run in March. Even if it's just the second round, that would be a huge deal. But this is a team, with Hubbard, a guy you can count on, the pieces they've added in the portal. They brought in their most highly touted freshman class that Jansen's brought in. They've got some guys who could give you some quality minutes as true freshmen. This should be a team that strives to finish in the top half of the conference and above 500 in the conference for the first time since Chris Jansen's been here.
Brian Hadad, Sports Talk Mississippi on Super Talk on Monday through Friday, weekdays from 3 to 6. Brian, appreciate the stuff. Safe travels to Fayetteville, and we'll see what happens at Razorback Stadium tomorrow.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
You don't always win your first bet. That's why MyBookie has you covered. Use our code HOGS, H-O-G-S, and your first bet up to $500 is fully covered. If your pick doesn't hit, you get it right back with our Bet Back bonus. Go to MyBookie.ag and use the code HOGS to claim your Bet Back bonus. MyBookie's where bettors win together because bragging's good, but cashing in is better. And your first bet is fully covered. Use our code HOGS.
Must opt in during the bet to use the Bet Back bonus.